Check out the Blast Off Podcast. Your hosts, Judd Myers and Scott Tipton, are your tour guides through the world of comic books, pop culture, and comic book retailing. Plus, amazing conversations with creative forces from film, television, music, and comics. The Blast Off Podcast. Available wherever finer podcasts are found or at blastoffcomics.com.
And now, live from Level 5 Productions on the island of Milleronia, it's The Larry Miller Show. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and everyone who just loves Labor Day. Hi, folks, and welcome back to the Larry Miller Show. I'm Larry Miller, but in a way, aren't we all? And boy, oh boy, is it beautiful here today. The Colonel and I are back on the mainland, and we are not on Milleronia today, and there are reasons for that, but there are always reasons for that, to be one place or the other. And I'll tell you in just a little bit, but it's a gorgeous day today here. It's been very, very hot. Well, here in Southern California, very hot. Like no kidding around hot, like Iraq hot. And then, a couple of nights ago, the hills across the valley started burning. And they burned from the heat. And folks, we've seen, from here in stately Miller Manor, my wife and I have seen, fires on the other side of the valley and on the western part several times, many times. And that's when some of the things, the articles you've read about, I'm sure that, big fire here, big fire there, but nothing like this. Those fires burned for 2-3 days, sometimes more, 4 or 5 days, and they just kept going. But they were small. You could see even from the other part of a valley. You could see the size of them and the pain of them. You knew people were being put out of their homes, but several people had died from them. But this fire was a little crazy. This fire was, and even Colonel Jeff, came in this morning saying, "Well, did you see that fire?" Well, we did. And we talked about it because that fire was not kidding around, and it was huge, and it was burning not only on the top of the ridge across the valley, but down it. That fire was coming down, and not just a little bit. And it was going over on the other side there, in this part of Southern California, and not a little bit either. And I mean, it was the kind of fire where you say, yikes, that really scares you and reminds you again, hey, wait a minute. This is nature. I don't even know exactly what that means, because you and I and Colonel Jeff spend most of our time in our homes and apartments, and when we think to ourselves, gee, do I need another room? Can I make a little repair myself on this or that? We don't think of what happens out there in real life, because most of the things in real life, by the way, aren't very welcoming to us. As PJ, I think it was PJ O'Rourke who once said, it was a good thought of, he said, every time someone says, gee, let's live with nature, let's go back to nature, he always thinks that, have you been to nature? Because it's horrifying, not just, the bugs, the animals, the things that come zipping out and crawl and fly in. But that's the way I felt, boy, oh boy, about that fire. So it's a going. But I'm back on the mainland, and I'm back in my home at stately Miller Manor. And, of course, that music, music makes me feel so good. That's the Jan Rube Orchestra and the Kelly McGillis Dancers, featuring boy tenor Brad Simpson asking the musical question, if you can really cut a rug, do you have to sew it back together? Yes. Yes, Brad, you do. I can tell you that unequivocally. And I told Colonel Jeff, and he agreed completely, that let's say, if you really can, cut a rug. If you're a great dancer and you're over at the local community center one night on maybe a Friday or Saturday night, and the whole town is out there and everybody's clapping and dancing, and, well, there's a live band there, and boy, oh boy, and you come with your girlfriend and you both start to dance in the middle of the floor there, and if you're so good that everyone clears out and they go, oh boy, here he goes, he's really gonna cut a rug, and then here he goes, and you really, just you and your girlfriend are given the whole center of the floor there, and you knock people out. You have a great time yourselves and you knock people out. And in fact, so much so that when the music is over, everybody cheers and applauds and shakes your hand, and the other girls give you a kiss, and everybody comes over to say congratulations. Well, when you leave that night with your girl, and you're going to get an ice cream soda maybe at the local diner, and before you even go out the door, well, the local minister comes up to you. He doesn't even have to say a word. He just holds his hand up for you to stop. You stop, and he hands you a big basket of sewing goods in it. And you take the basket, and he just points behind you to that rug. And yes, he's saying, and everyone else is happy now too, because, well, you did cut a rug, but you know what? Now it's time for you to sew it back together. And you, well, well, never mind the but I's. Go sew that rug back together. And your girlfriend can go get an ice cream soda with all the other young men who used to be your friends before they took your girlfriend out for an ice cream soda. But that's the way it goes. Good question, Brad. If you can really cut a rug, do you have to sew it back together? Yes, you do. And if you do it fast enough, and if you do it well enough, by the way, you might be able to run over to the diner and pick your girlfriend up and take her to another table, or maybe, the late-night coffee place or pizza place. But she probably doesn't need to hang out with your friends anymore. Anyway, good question, Brad. And by the way, I'll say more about this in just a little bit, but Jan Rube, who was leading the orchestra tonight, played Eli Lapp in a great movie, Witness. I hope you've seen that. And he played the grandfather of Kelly McGillis, when they all lived at that house. He was great, a great actor. He did it all for drama and for comedy. He was wonderful. And Kelly McGillis, God bless her, has always been, by God, her acting is fabulous. And in that movie, Witness, you know what? All you have to do is look at her once, and if you're not completely in love with her, you're out of your mind. And they deserved a big tip of the hat, both of them, and all of the folks in that movie, and you'll see I'll talk about that later. And by Amazon. That's right, Amazon, still my favorite company in the world, because the only company that does three things no other company can do. Number one, order anything you want, you'll get it from Amazon. Anything you want. Number two, they already have it. They don't even have to order it themselves. They don't need to get an extra one. They don't need to call the company and make sure that it gets there fast. They don't need to do anything. They already have it in their gigantic, mile-wide, mile-long, mile-high, mile-deep warehouse. And that's a lot of miles, just to say, but they have it. And number three, we get a percentage of whatever it is you order. They send us here at the show a percentage of anything you order. That makes a big deal to us because we take that money in cash and, we put it immediately into a big steel box where we save it for our next big fancy fried chicken dinner with 2 drinks beforehand in a different place. If you want to get to Amazon, you could go yourself. Don't go on your own computer. Don't go on your own laptop. Don't go on your own iPhone. You know what? Come to us. Go to our website here, LarryMillerPodcast.com. Who's on the mountain? Tom Mix. That was such a giddy ending there of the trumpet player. That's the kind where the band leader, the teacher, the orchestra leader, In this case, the band just goes, why, I oughta. Hey, was that Carson? Get him back here. I told him not to interrupt like that. But, you know what? We'll take you to Amazon. Go to our website, and we have a banner that says Amazon. Click our banner. Then go take a nap. Go lay yourself down in your favorite easy chair, maybe your lazy boy chair. Sure, you could make a nice sandwich and open a cold beer and see if there's a ball game on. But the truth is, just plopping down in that easy chair is good enough, and we'll get you where you want to go. And tell them thanks from us. And one of these days, you know what? It just hit me. Colonel, one of these days, we should invite some of the Amazon people to go on our big fancy fried chicken dinner with us. And I bet they'd like it, and I bet they'd like it a lot. And that brings me to my favorite part of the show, the joke of the week. I like everything Colonel Jeff puts together. I think you know that, but it's true. It's worth saying again. He can... Speaking of sewing things back together, he can sew anything back together in the world of show business. And this is a pretty good joke. We both like this and got a kick out of it. Two fellas, two friends. Oh, and they've been friends a long time now, and they're in their 40s, and they're walking down a nice city street, and they're walking their dogs together. And one has, a nice Chihuahua, little dog, the Chihuahua. And the other has a Doberman, and that's, those dogs look, like you don't want to mess with them anyway. You don't want to mess with any doggy, but, boy, you see a Doberman pinscher and you can stay on the other side of the street for that one. And the two friends were strolling along. It's a nice summer's evening, about 8 o'clock. And one says to the other, say, you hungry? I feel like a little bite. And the other one says, I was just thinking the same thing. Yes, let's do that. And they walk another block or two looking, and of course, in a big city, and they ran into a nice diner that was all set up, a big coffee shop with the lights all on, and they said, that looked pretty good, that place. Yes, it does. So they both walk up to the front door, and there's a sign out front, though, that said, no dogs allowed. And the second friend with the Chihuahua says, I guess we can't go in there. And his friend says, you know what? I've gone through this before. Just follow my lead. We won't have any problems. And he takes out a pair of sunglasses and puts those on and walks right up to the diner door with his Doberman pinscher. And the owner comes out and says, hiya, fellas. Welcome. I'd like to make you something to eat here, but I'm sorry, no dogs are allowed here. And the fella's rocking his head back and forth now and says, I don't think you understand, sir. I'm blind, and this is my seeing eye dog. And the owner says to him, a Doberman pinscher is a seeing eye dog? I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't quite believe that. And the man says, yeah, it's true. In fact, Dobermans make the best seeing eye dogs. They're friendly. They're attentive. They're very smart. And he's going to love me forever, and I'll love him forever, and he takes care of me. And the owner says, all right. Go ahead in and grab yourself a booth then, and I think we can find you something. And he goes in, and then his friend comes up with the Chihuahua, and the owner says, listen, buddy, I'm sorry, but we don't let dogs in here. We don't accept dogs, and so I'm afraid you can't come in. And the second friend says also, you don't understand. And he starts moving his head. He doesn't have sunglasses on, but he's moving his head now back and forth and says, I'm blind too, and this is my seeing eye dog. And so I should go in with him. And the owner says, wait a minute, your seeing eye dog is a Chihuahua? And the guy suddenly looks very shocked and says, they gave me a Chihuahua? Well, I hope you like that. We got a kick out of it here. And as ever, you like that joke, it's a cute one. Tell it to your friends and family and anyone you like, anyone you meet on the street. And that's the joke of the week. And that brings me to my second favorite part of the show, the Poetry Corner. Wonder what the dogs ordered at that diner, by the way. I suppose they ate whatever the guys got them. This is a beautiful poem, folks. Robert Frost is one of my favorite poets. He's American, and I think he roughly lived from 1875 to 1960, roughly there. And he was a real Yankee, a New England Yankee fella, and taught, by the way, at school I used to go to, Amherst College. And he was gone. He had passed on by the time I got there. But you know what? I love this guy and always have. And what a look and what a sound he has for our country, anywhere he went. And this is a good example of that. It's called Stopping by a Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Isn't that lovely? It's always been a favorite of mine from a favorite poet. How wonderful his use of words. What a wordsmith, what a thinker. Well, what a philosopher, really. He gives his harnessed bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. Everything this wonderful man wrote was as wonderful as he was. I hope you like that. Stopping by a woods on a snowy eve. Look it up sometime yourself and see what you think. And that brings me to my third favorite part of the show. MMM, Triple M, the Magic Movie Moment. Well, folks, this is a terrific movie, and I just saw it a couple of days ago. It popped up on TV on one of the channels, and I don't know about you, but when a movie's great, and it was just starting too, and I thought, oh boy, this is wonderful. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I thought, this is a perfect time to watch Witness from 1985. A great movie. I hope you know it well. Witness, directed by Peter Weir, starring, what a cast this thing has. Harrison Ford, Kelly McGillis, Joseph Sommer, Lucas Haas, Jan Rubes, who I mentioned before, Patti LuPone, Danny Glover. Oh, so many folks. And what a great story. It's supposed to be about, crime and death and big fighting and real danger. But it's not really. It's about love. And it's about new discovery in a great Amish community in Pennsylvania. And, it's just so good. Please see it again. But the magic movie moment is this. The barn raising. In the middle of all the action and all the parts of this story that really tie together and take us away, there is a day when Harrison Ford he's learning a little bit about what it's like to live in an Amish community like this. Well, and he and Kelly McGillis are falling for each other, but even they don't know it yet. We know it before they do. And then one day we learned about this in second, third grade, that some communities all over America have barn raisings, which is a very great community thing to do. It has a lot of friendship and affection in it. And, well, I suppose it's a kind of charity, too, that when there's a new couple there that's just got their new farm and it's just starting, well, they need a barn. And you know who can put up that barn in one day? All their new friends in the Amish community. And all the men come with their tool bags, and all the ladies come in their lovely dresses, and they set up a big lunch at tables outdoors there for everyone. It's terrific, folks. It starts out, it comes from a different part of the story, and there's no introduction to it either. It just begins. The sun is coming up, and the music does such a good part. It has a strength to it, but a beauty to it of this is how these people live. And they start, and there's still the characters look at each other a little suspiciously, but they're so wonderful. And Harrison Ford shows everyone he's actually a great carpenter too. In addition, they all know he's a police detective. He's a detective in murder in Philadelphia. And now, though, they know he's a great carpenter too. And each of those walls goes up, and each of the walls of framework go up. And there's Ford right at the top. Oh boy, and he's just so terrific. And Boris Godunov, who's playing the handsome blonde Amishman, who is the one who really has a crush on Kelly McGillis, and he's not that thrilled that here comes Harrison Ford. Oh, they'd speak about each other so wonderfully too that you never knew this, but the Amish always say be careful out there among them English. You can see it's just so wonderful. It's 200 years old. And, folks, that barn goes up and they eat lunch together. And you're as charmed as they are. More charmed. The look I get into that community as they do their work and have their lunch and then do their work again and finish this new barn for this new young couple that just got married. And as they're all walking out to get back into their wagons, of course, pulled by horses, and there's one of the other Amish men who's another carpenter there has his arm and he's clapping Ford on the shoulder going, "You good, you a hot dog, you good carpenter." It's much better than that. But it's really a charm. And she says at that point, by the way, this is Amos and Lydia, the young couple. They're the ones who just got married. And she says, they're the ones we built the barn for. And folks, even that moment, boy, what a great young couple. They're handsome and pretty, and they look the way they should, meaning they're farm people. So they're not tiny. They're big, and that the guy Amos, he looks like he just came from the Olympics, and his wife is very pretty. She's beautiful, but also God bless her. She's someone if you have to call to someone and say, "Hey, somebody move that ox." She could get up and go over there and pick it up, but she's beautiful, and I don't mean heavy set fat. I mean she's a farm girl. The way the women were in her family for the last 10 generations. Folks, it's charming. It's a barn-raising scene in the middle of a great movie. We learn more about these characters and about the area. And that director, Peter Weir, sure knew characters and area. And he paints us a picture in that barn-raising that's as charming and moving as it could be. I hope you watch it. If you've never seen Witness, see it. You'll be glad you did. And if you've seen it 50 times like me, see it again. You'll be even more glad you did. And by the way, here's a little quick note on, the Pennsylvania Dutch and that whole community. I've been there before. In fact, I had a part in a movie that was shot in some of the with the Amish people. But there's a funny thing about that. They're not Dutch. That's something I never knew till just a few years ago. And I don't think maybe anyone really knows that we all always say, well, the Pennsylvania Dutch. And they're not Dutch. That was just the way local Americans began pronouncing it, 250 years ago. It was their way of pronouncing Deutsch. They're the Pennsylvania Germans. They're Deutsch. And they don't speak a Dutch, they speak German. So that struck me a little bit of, well, how do you like that? They're not Dutch at all, they're Germans. Folks, it's a great movie about them. Please see it as soon as you can. And, the truth is that what they didn't have, you and I are the same on this too, the gadgets that we don't have are things we don't miss. Anyway, we don't really care. I had, and I've told you over the last few months, I got a new coffee maker from this or that. We got a new toaster. And I like talking about things that we don't really think about that much. And we're all obviously, you and I and Colonel Jeff and all of us are prisoners of our coffee machines. That's what we do. We like coffee. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have 20 cups a day. But it's nice to have a cup in the morning, then maybe a second one, and maybe a cup a little later in the day. And it could be decaf, it could be regular, it doesn't matter. But we all have the same ones. They're plastic coffee makers, and we put the tiny cups that have the little aluminum foil on the cover, on the lid. We pop one in there, and we just, go through it, and it just punctures it into top, pop. And that thing is made in about 30 seconds. And we just turn the on button on, and that's fine. But you know what? It's never that satisfying, is it? And what I mean by satisfying, it doesn't feel like you've really made yourself something, does it? It feels like, you're doing what everyone else does, and we're all just making a cup of coffee in a plastic cup. But that's all right. And when it broke, though, ours broke here on the mainland in our house. And at the time, that day, we didn't have coffee. And then my wife that night found an old coffee pot we had that looks like, one of those coffee pots from The Right Stuff. In fact, when you see that, which was a great movie too, when you see The Right Stuff and you see, one of the ladies pouring a cup of coffee from it sitting in the living room there, that's the pot. And it's, about 1.5 feet high. And it looks exactly like it came right out of 1962. So it's just, and this one, by the way, you plug in, so it's electric. So it's not like something where you build a campfire to do it. But it has all the pieces and all the parts. And you clean them out. And it has, and you clean the coffee pot out and you fill it up to whatever you want, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 cups. And you fill it with the water and you put that canister back in that you all know. Someone who landed from Mars would know what this was. And then you put that in, you fill that with the coffee. And then you put the cap on the pot, which has, it's the percolator. It has that piece of glass on top. And you plug it in, and it's all you have to do is plug it in. And then about, 30 seconds or so later, it starts to, you hear it rustling in the middle there, and then it just pops that first bump, and it's just the clear water coming up and going back down through the coffee. And then blop, it blops again in about 15 seconds, and then it starts to blop again and regularly. And Colonel Jeff and I just stood there watching it, and he said, I hope you don't mind, but it just seems, I just kind of want to watch this. And I said, mind, I know exactly what you mean. That's part of the fun of coffee. You want to make it. You want to know that you made it. You want others to know, hey, this guy makes a good cup of coffee. And so the Colonel and I both stood there and watched it, bluck, bluck, and as sure it goes then as it starts to beep regularly. It doesn't take long. It's about 7 minutes the thing takes. Longer than the ones we all have now, sure, but Folks, who cares? It's wonderful that it took longer. It really made both of us feel great. And then it was done, and the light comes on, and we were already talking about our show today and things we would want to do. And I let the Colonel pick the cup he wanted, and I picked the one I wanted from our little rack there. And I poured us both a nice cup of coffee. And you know what? It is something worth doing. I'd like to get, and I mentioned this to the Colonel again, I've mentioned this before, I'd like to get an old coffee pot. I mean, it could be a new coffee pot. There's got to be places around that still have coffee pots made in America that's just a pot with the glass on top there, the glass bubble, and you don't plug it in anywhere. You just put in the water and the coffee, and you have to watch it, though. That's the point. You have to brew that coffee personally. And that's how you get known as, boy, you know what? That Larry makes a good cup of coffee. So I don't mind being addicted to single cup brewers. We all are. Now that's fine. But folks, you know this as well as I do. Nothing can beat a real coffee percolator. And the Colonel and I know that now. I've had it the last couple of days, too. I've been planning to go over to, one of the bed and bath places or the supermarket over at Ralph's and just get a new percolator, a new plastic thing. Because that's what we have, and that's what we make. But you know what? I think I'm going to use this one for a while, a long while. And my wife likes it, too. And there's nothing like finding something from the past that you still really like, that makes it different because it's from the past, that makes it better because it's from the past. And I'm telling you, both the Colonel and I, as we take those first couple of sips, as we're ready to walk back downstairs to the studio here, you know what? We both said, say, that's pretty good. It's better than the ones you make in the little plastic cup. They're fine. Good luck. Congratulations to everyone who's, well, like us, just addicted to them. But you know what? This percolator and the ground coffee you get in it is better already. And I suppose I'm thinking about the past like that because we just passed Labor Day. And that's a holiday from the past. And I looked it up because Labor Day is something we don't think about. It's also, yes, it's old. It's history. Yes, it's American history. And we don't think about it much. We don't do anything much about it. But it's worth learning about. I looked it up, this morning on the internet, just about Labor Day. The first one was in 1872 in New York City. And all the working men who had union jobs came by to what since became Union Square in New York, down at 14th Street. Well, a lot of speeches have been made there over the years. And Labor Day, boy, and then it came out that, in the next year after that and 2 years after that, came out a lot of cities in America, Cleveland and Dallas and Chicago, all sorts of places, began to have their own Labor Day parades. And people were hurt there. There were, there were a lot of Americans in those days, and the bigger companies hired fellows to put the fear of God into some of these people. I don't know why. There's so much I don't understand in life. Maybe you're the same way. But you know what? There was Labor Day, and then it became national. And I think it was Grover Cleveland, who was the first one to say, let's make this a national holiday, Labor Day. And it coincided with the start of school. Labor Day was always the start of school. To me, and I think everyone, maybe to all of you too, right after Labor Day, today should be the first day of school, where everything starts again, where life becomes brand new again. It's almost, the Colonel was saying before, it's almost like the New Year. And I agree, it's almost, like New Year's Day. And there we were. I remember, I know school has already started 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago in a lot of places. And this is all schools, elementary, junior high, high school, they start in the middle of August, which has to be like going to school in Iraq. I mentioned them before because it's true. Good Lord, every classroom in our country, from Maine to Montana to Texas, must be 137 degrees. Then the kids go back to their homes, all of which are only 133 degrees. So it's much cooler. But, and what's wrong with us? It hit me that the only air-conditioned places we have really are malls now. And so you go to the mall, which is air-conditioned, which is cool. But, of course, the walk from your parked car into the mall is 10 minutes of 135 degrees. And then inside the mall is finally 68. I don't think I understand why we don't understand why we can't make our places, by the way, cooler than they are. I don't think I quite get that. Remember the old saying that, well, we can put a man on the moon, but a common cold still takes 2 weeks to go away. Folks, our malls are 68. Why do our schools and offices and homes still have to be like the Sahara Desert? You don't like it, and I don't like it. I don't think anyone can like it. But it's worth mentioning again. That's why I was glad I learned a little about it. They had a column of 10 things you're not supposed to do on Labor Day, or something like that. And I hadn't even remembered most or any of these things. Maybe you do. That the old saying, I remember this. The old saying was you're not supposed to wear white after Labor Day. Now, even as a kid or an adult, I don't understand why. I can't. In fact, I can't imagine why. Why? All right, but why not? Well, and then Emily Post was saying that because of that a lot of the tonier folks would have their afternoon parties, and that was a lot of white gloves and white shoes, I guess, white slacks, and often on the same guy, by the way, which was unsettling, I would think, at those parties. But, so you're not supposed to, they've got to be a subtle rule of no white clothes after Labor Day. Just school and a kind of new year. I'd rather see school start after Labor Day. I think that was just the right time for it to start. It always felt like the right time for school to start. And, I don't care if you're in a big college football team and you got to go in, start workouts 3 weeks before or something, before school starts. But I'm not sure I understand why we can't still all start school after Labor Day. And I guess I know that. And, well, you and I know the same things too. That Homer is Homer and Pluto is a planet. So remember, folks, as always, if you walked out of bed today and had a job to go to and a home to come back to, and someone there who cares about you, folks, the game's over and you've won. And that's sure still the truest thing I know. Be well. Have a good school year. And we'll see you next time.